All right, so a quick refresher on the multiplication and division. So with multiplication, whether or not you're multiplying two whole numbers, so say, I don't know, say 235 times 47. If you're multiplying those two whole numbers, you line them up according to their ones place. So in any aspect, even if this was I don't know, let's say 2.35 times 4.7. No matter what, you always line them up according to their last digit. So it's always going to be according to the 5 and the 7. It really doesn't matter what place value it's in, as long as it's lined up according to their last digit. So either way, you're going to multiply them both the exact same way, because with that 235 times 47, and the same way as if I was multiplying this one over here, the 2.35 times 4.7, I'm going to multiply it as if it's 235 times 47. Those decimals really don't come into play until we put it into our answer, the decimal. So either way, let's start with the whole number one that's over here on the left. So with that one, we start with the ones place of the 47. So you're going to start with that, with the bottom number always. You start with the ones place of that one, and you take that individually and multiply it by the ones place of the top number, then the tens place, then the hundreds place, and so on. So starting with that, multiplying 7 first, 7 times 5. What I do, that one is the answer to 7 times 5, we know is 35. So I put my 5 down, and I carry my 3 up here to the top. So now when I multiply the next value, I'm going to take 7 and multiply it by 3, and then what I'll have to do is I'll have to add that additional 3 from the top. So 7 times 3 we know is 21, plus 3 gives me 24, so I put my 4 down, same way I did before, and carry the 2. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and multiply the 7 times 2, and once again I'll add that 2 at the top. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 gives me 16. So this time I could put the 6 down. If I carried the 1, it's just going to go ahead and bring that down, since I don't have anything to multiply right there. Okay, so there's my ones place when I multiply that out. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and multiply the next value, which is going to be that 4. With that, whenever we move on to a new place value, what I need to do is then bring a 0 down. And let me just change my my color here so that it's easier to see what we're multiplying now. So now when I'm multiplying out the 4, I'm going to take that one step at a time. 4 times 5 being 20. So I'll go ahead and, first I bring down the 0. So sorry, I forgot to put that there. So I multiply the 4 times the 5 now, so this times this. That gives me 20, so I bring my 0 down, and I'm going to carry my 2. Sorry, I forgot to erase that 3, but you can kind of see that too since it's written in green there. So now I multiply 4 times 3, which gives me 12. So I add that extra 2 up there. That gives me 14. Then I carry my 1 up here to the next value. Now it's 4 times 2, which gives me 8, plus that 1 gives me 9. So there are my answers. I no longer have any more numbers to multiply, but what I need to do now is add together my two answers, what I just received here. So 5 plus 0 gives me 5, 4 plus 0 gives me 4, 6 plus 4 gives me 10. I just need to carry the 1 now, and over on the left-hand column, I'm left with 1 plus 9, which is 11. So my answer over here on the left is going to be 11,045. If we were dealing with this problem over here on the right, again, it's actually going to be the same thing. If I were to multiply it one step at a time, I'd actually get the same answers. I'd get 5, 4, 6, 1. Down here I get 0, 0, 4, 9. I'd add them together, get the exact same thing. The only difference now, we need to put our decimal in that answer. How we do that is we go back up to our original problem. I simply just count the number of decimal places that I had in that original problem. So meaning to the right of the decimal. So for instance, in 2.35, there are 2 decimal places there. In 4.7, there's 1 decimal place there. giving me a total of 3 decimal places, which means I'm going to have a total of 3 decimal places in my answer. So what I need to do is just simply count from the right, 1, 2, 3 places. My decimal will then go right there. So my answer, if these were decimals, would be 11.045. Hope that helps with that multiplication. That should be a kind of a reminder for that. Let's go ahead and let's move on to that division then. Okay, so let me just clear this out of the way here. One step at a time. Okay. Okay, so looking at division now. So division is a little bit different, and it'll be different in both the whole numbers or if we're dividing by decimals. So let's take a look at the division of whole numbers first. So let's say we have, let me just pick 2 random numbers. Let's say we have 635 divided by 4. Okay, so sorry, this is, let's say, divided by 4. That way you can see that bracket a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to write my answers in blue here. So what we're doing when we have 635 divided by 4, what I'm technically asking myself here is I want to know how many times will 4 go into this number, the 635. But what we can do is we can take it one step at a time. So breaking that down, you can ask yourself first, how many times will 4 go into 6? And move on from there. So I'll answer that slowly as I go along here. So asking myself first, how many times will 4 go into 6? It goes in 1 time. It goes in 1 time because 1 times 4, that's what we're going to look at right here, 1 times 4 happens to be 4. So I'll write that underneath my 6 there. What I do is I subtract those 2 to see what the difference is, and that gives me 2. So therefore, had this problem have just been 6 divided by 4, then I would end up with 1 with a remainder of 2. But because we still have some other numbers down or over there, we need to go ahead and then continue to bring those down and continue dividing. So I bring down my 3. Now my question is going to be, how many times will this 4 go into now my 23? Once I bring my number down, that's when I ask myself, how many times will that number outside the bracket go into that number? So how many times will 4 go into 23? It actually goes in 5 times because 5 times 4 is 20. So when I subtract, that's a horrible subtraction sign, sorry. When I subtract, I get 3. So there's my difference. Again, now if this was 63 divided by 4, that means my answer would be 15 with a remainder of 3. But I still have one more number to bring down, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that down now. I'm going to bring down my 5. So now I ask myself, how many times will 4 now go into 35? And 4 will go into 35 8 times. I'm going to put 8 up here because 8 times 4 is 32. When I subtract, I get a remainder of 3. So that's my division of whole numbers. My answer here would simply just be 158 with a remainder of 3. Now, had this been a division of decimals, and honestly, we really could keep going if I wanted to here. So just looking at this, actually, let me just erase this, if I can. I'm still learning this app, so give me a second. Okay. If I do that, okay, it actually just erases the whole thing. Okay, so that was 8. Let me put this here. Okay, if I wanted to keep going, if I wanted to, say, okay, well, let's get a decimal instead, what I could have done, I could go ahead and put a decimal here and add a 0, which means I'm going to have a decimal in my answer, and I could keep going, meaning I could bring this 0 down and continue with the same process that I was doing. On your quiz, though, when you have a division of whole numbers, all I need is that remainder. But when you go to check it in your calculator, it's going to give you a decimal. So just keep that in mind, that if I were to check 635 divided by 4 in my calculator, it will give me, oh gosh, I don't know, it'll be 158 point, I don't know, let me double check. If I do that, my calculator gives me 158.75. Yeah, that's right. So I could have kept going, meaning I'll only have to add one more zero to keep going here. But like I said, on your quiz, you don't necessarily need to do that. On your quiz, the only time where you will need to keep going with it is when you get a division of decimals question. So let me show you one of those. So let's take a look here. Let me get rid of all this that's in our way. This is a weird app, this process of dividing. Okay, so our division of decimals. So when we're dividing two decimals, like I said, let's go ahead and look at, let's say if we had, I don't know, 700, I'm going to try and write them kind of small in case we need to keep going pretty far. Let's say 746, or let's make it 74.65 divided by, let's say 0.4. And there's a reason I did it this way. This is kind of similar to what you'll see on your quiz. When you have a decimal outside of your bracket, what you're going to need to do there is get rid of that decimal outside of your bracket. Meaning, this 0.4 over here, I don't want it to be 0.4. I want it to be a whole number. So what I'll have to do is move my decimal as many times as I can to turn it into a whole number. So meaning, in this case, I'll only have to move it one time, and that will turn it into the whole number 4. But don't forget, anytime you move your decimal outside of your bracket, you've got to do the same thing inside your bracket in order to keep it equal. So we're going to end up with 746.5 divided by 4. So that's going to help us out here. So anytime you have a decimal outside of your bracket, go ahead and get rid of that. And when you go to check your answer, you're going to get the same answer whether or not you're dividing 746.5 divided by 4 or 74.65 divided by 0.4. So let's go ahead and work that one out. So once again, let me just rewrite it up here at the top. So it's 746.5 divided by 4 now, and of course I left no room up there at the top. So it's 746.5 divided by 4. Okay, so once again, we divided out the exact same way. So I asked myself, how many times will 4 go into 7? 4 happens to go into 7 one time, so I put that over the 7. Multiply 4 times 1 to get 4. I subtract, that gives me a remainder of 3. So I need to keep going with my numbers here. So I go ahead and bring down my next value, which is 4. So now I ask myself, how many times will 4 go into 34? And 4 goes into 34 8 times, because 8 times 4 is 32. So when I subtract, I get a remainder of 2. Keep going, bring down my next value, which is 6. I need to know how many times will 4 go into 26. It goes in 6 times, because I know that 6 times 4 is 24. So when I subtract, I get another remainder of 2. I have one more number to bring down, which is my 5. So I go ahead and put that down here. And now I ask myself, how many times will 4 go into 25? It too happens to go in 6 times, because 6 times 4 is 24. When I subtract, I get a remainder of 1. So now in decimals, and then again what's going to happen is the decimal that's right here in your problem is going to be right above it in your answer. So I'm going to go ahead and put that guy up here. So it's going to be 186.6 something. But because I have a remainder down there, I need to keep going until I get a remainder of 0. So how we do that is what we're going to do is we're going to add a 0 to the end of our original problem. And that actually doesn't change that number. It keeps it, it's still 746.5, but adding that 0 behind it doesn't make a difference. But it does allow me to have another number to bring down now. So I can go ahead and bring down that 0. And I'm going to have to kind of go off to the side here, so I hope you can still make sense of it. But now I ask myself, how many times will 4 go into 10? 4 will go into 10 twice, because 4 times 2 is, let's see, I'll just put it this way, is 8. So when I subtract, that gives me a remainder of 2. So once again, I still have another remainder. I still have a number down there. I want to keep going until I get a remainder of 0. So I'm going to add another 0 and go ahead and bring that 0 down now. So now I have 20. and I asked myself, how many times will 4 go into 20? Conveniently, 4 will go evenly into 25 times. So I'll go ahead and multiply the same way I have been. 4 times 5 is 20. When I subtract now, I get a remainder of 0. Now I can stop. So when you double check your original problem, remember your original problem was 74.65 divided by 0.4. It should give you the answer we have up above here, 186.625. You'll notice that you'll get the exact same answer. So I hope that helps you with your division of decimals. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.